I'm the program director and case manager for RAASE. So that stands for the Rockford Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation. We work with individuals who have been sexually exploited or are being trafficked. Right now, at this point in time, we're working with the population that's 18 and up, and anyone who is female or identifies as being female. We are going to be expanding that soon. A little history about RAASE. Up until now, it has been volunteer ran. We have an amazing board of directors who have helped and supported our volunteers. So I am the first employee, which is huge. So I wear many hats and do many different roles and have various hours and days, and there's not one that's the same. So with RAASE, we really work hard to walk alongside our survivors. Everything that we do is survivor-led. We make sure that they're presented with every possible option that there is to them. We have a drop-in center that opened, I want to say it was back in 2019. I started in September, so about 6 months ago, but it is open right now on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Survivors can come in. They're greeted and said, welcome home. How are you doing? We missed you. We're so happy to see you. And it's their home. It's their safe place. So when they come in, right now we are doing some COVID screening questions, good old COVID. So we take their temperature. We'll encourage them to use some hand sanitizer. We ask that they wear a mask, all those fun things. But while they come to the drop-in center, they can take a shower. They can do laundry. We have volunteers who love to cook, so they'll prepare a meal for them. If that volunteer is not working that night, then we have stuff that's ready to go for them. So we may have maybe frozen pizzas or mac and cheese or Lunchables, spaghetti, whatever we've got on hand. But yeah, they can come, they can get clothing, get hygiene products. We connect them with whatever referrals they may be needing and resources. I provide case management to them. So what that kind of looks like is maybe they need help getting things like an ID or a birth certificate or a social security card, or getting their state insurance card or food stamps or connections to food banks, whatever that may look like. We will walk alongside them and help them through that process, connect them with whatever agencies we need to. We also have a place that we can lock up their forms for them. In the human trafficking world, it is known that typically their forms of ID and personal belongings are taken from them. So if we're working with a survivor to obtain those forms of identification and they don't have a safe place to store them, and they don't want to keep them on them, they can store them with us in a locked file cabinet. They can have access to it whenever they need, but it's just a safe place for them that they know where it's at and they know when they can get it. We do some street outreach. Typically once a week we will go out through various neighborhoods and drive around, and we meet people that are in the community. We meet survivors, we meet pimps, we meet traffickers, we meet Johns, we meet them all. But we will take along with us some hygiene bags, and typically in a hygiene bag, we'll have things like shampoo, lotions, razors, shaving cream, pads, tampons, condoms, whatever kind of just basic necessities they may need. Right now, we've been handing out some hats and gloves, hot chocolate, and little cups if we have them. If we have snacks, we'll hand out snacks. And it's really a way for us to connect with the community. So while, yes, we are looking to connect with survivors, it's also connecting with the community, letting them know what resources are available in their very own community. So we do that. I also receive a number of referrals from community partners, as well as different entities in the community too. So different things like maybe schools or after school clubs, YMCA, doctor's offices, and those clients that I typically work with, are slightly more stable, I would say. So maybe they're in a treatment program already, maybe they have housing, maybe they have some sort of support system already. And so those clients I will meet with weekly. We will work on goals. We'll talk about, what they would like their future to look like, present them with all sorts of different options with that, and really just walk alongside them there and be a support and advocate to them. If we connect with a survivor, we have two different little cards that we'll hand out. One has just a phone number on it. It's non-identifiable. It doesn't have any information on it. It's just a phone number. And that phone number goes to my cell phone. They can call, they can text. My voicemail does not have anything identifiable on it for the very reason that if someone got a hold of that number that maybe isn't appropriate or is maybe being nosy and checking up on someone to figure out what's going on, it's not identifiable. So with that, it's a safe line that they can call. We are not a crisis line. So if someone is in immediate crisis, we encourage them to call the hotline, but they know that they can call, they can leave a message, and we will connect with them. We also will hand out another card that has our address to the drop-in center. And all it says on there is that they can get shower, laundry, food, and I think that's it on it. So it's another discreet, non-super identifiable thing. So they know where to come to the drop-in center. With that being said, our drop-in center is a 100-year-old house. It is a staple in the community. It used to be an old soup kitchen back in the day. So a lot of our survivors on the street already know what they're like, where we are. If you say, oh, we're at the White House, they automatically know where that is. We also help in the problem solving courts. Specifically, it's referred to as path court. And we will work with individuals who maybe have faced trafficking at some point in their history, and maybe they have gotten some sort of charge that, like maybe shoplifting or something that's associated with the trafficking. So maybe they were encouraged or forced to steal something in order to achieve whatever they had to do for this trafficker, right? So the courts have been aware of, this problem, this is going on. So now there's a specialized court that works with these women to work through as a team. So there's a team of us that work together and create essentially like a case plan of how we can help support this individual and how we can help them maybe get out of that lifestyle. But also in the same process, it helps to work to reduce or make those charges probationable so that they are not stuck with some charges that maybe aren't fair, to be honest. So we do a lot of advocacy with that. The team that we have now, we have like a trauma counselor on there. We have someone from domestic violence, someone from the mental health court, myself, probation. So it's really a team effort, and it's really driven by the unique needs of that survivor. So it's not like a one size fits all, if that makes sense. So sometimes in the problem solving courts, like in mental health court and substance court, there's kind of a rote manual and a rote routine of what's going on. But in path court, it's very unique and individualized. Everything, like I said, is survivor led with RAASE, and we encourage that with path court as well. We have a team of volunteers that are amazing. They all have a unique niche, I guess you could say. So it's really cool that we have a group of individuals that can come together and all serve a unique purpose. And we all have the same goal in mind, is to work with these survivors and walk alongside them and help them however we can. And so I am very proud of the volunteers we have, and we're working on onboarding some new volunteers right now and working with them and figuring out, what their expertise is, what they're passionate about, and how we can utilize their passions. What is sexual exploitation? It's any actual or attempted abuse of a position of vulnerability, differential power, or trust for sexual purposes, including but not limited to profiting monetarily, socially, or politically from the sexual exploitation of another. Human trafficking. I know that this has been a hot word lately. Last month was Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So I would not be surprised if you guys have heard that term, but I think it's important to really understand what that means. So when someone says the word human trafficking, what it's referring to as the recruitment and transportation of persons within or across boundaries by force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of exploiting them economically. So the biggest thing with trafficking is there has to be force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the three things. Now, if the individual is under the age of 18, there's no requirement to show those things. They would work with police or DCFS, and they would look through it that way. So when we look at human trafficking, we know that there is some overlap with domestic violence. Not everyone who's experiencing domestic violence is being trafficked, and not everyone who's being trafficked is experiencing domestic violence. But we do know that there are a lot of similarities between the two of those things. So typically with domestic violence, it's usually an intimate partner or a romantic relationship. With trafficking, there's a little difference there. Usually there's the exploitation, there's a stigma, participation in a unique subculture, victimization by people outside the primary relationship that do not help or assist the victims, sexual activity outside the primary relationship. And then where that overlap comes in is the biggest one is going to be the dominance and power, but there's also grooming, psychological abuse, irritability, secrecy, violence, and rules. So we also know that when an individual has been trafficked, they typically have experienced something else going on in their lives. So we know that they typically will have a history of child abuse, drug use, being a runaway youth, homelessness, poverty, literacy, labor exploitation, unstable mental health, sexual identity, sexual assault, and domestic violence. We also know that an individual who has been trafficked, if they have a history of sexual abuse, there's 70 to 90% of them have a history of sexual abuse. Because of that abuse, they're 28 times more likely to be arrested for prostitution at some point. We also know that 85% of trafficked youth have a prior welfare involvement. And our LGBTQ population is 7 times more likely to engage in survival sex than heterosexual youth. We also know that youth with a history of dating violence or rape are at a higher risk for sex trafficking. So when we look at this cycle of how things are going on and why it's kind of continuing, we know that there's insufficient or non-existent or appropriate services for victims. There's an ineffective community response to prostituted or exploited people. So this cycle just continues to go on. And so that's really where RAASE works to fill those gaps by increasing education awareness, by working with survivors and making those connections so that we can hopefully break through this cycle. So we know that in our community, we have a few hotspot areas. And to be honest, I don't think this is just limited to our community. I think that this is probably everywhere. But we know in Winnebago County that there are issues with our truck stops, exotic dance clubs, massage parlors, hotels and escort services. At the street level, we could have residential brothels and homes. In our foster care systems with group homes, the juvenile system, schools and recreational areas. But I think a big one, and even more now since COVID has happened, is our internet, our apps, gaming, all those resources out there. We've turned into kind of a virtual world, and things are readily available and easily found on the internet. The biggest thing of ways that you guys can help, no judgment. That's the biggest thing. I will preach that all day, every day. You can have special events like having this Zoom today. fundraising and donating. We're always in need of clothing. That is a huge thing that we can always use. But we also like to hand out food stuff. So if you ever want to do a food drive of non-perishable items, that's huge. But also keeping in mind, like if you do those things, we like to get canned goods that have the pop tops on them because they don't have can openers, so they can't open it. So being conscientious of those things, making sure that you guys are educated, using your social media as a platform. So like I said, I'm on Facebook a lot, share my post, it starts a conversation. People get interested in the topic, they want to learn more. That's key. But also challenging yourself and creating a culture shift. Our volunteer training, we have some that's direct services and indirect services. Direct services, you do have to go through a training that's typically 22 hours. It's not all in one day. It's usually spread out over a couple weeks. If you are looking to do indirect services, which is more like helping with cleaning or organizing things, you do not have to go through training for that. So yeah, definitely reach out to me if you're ever interested in volunteering.